Good evening, everyone, wherever you are at. We are 7 minutes into the webinar. Today we have Tom. Tom is an Excel MVP and a trainer. So the host of today's training is Crisp Excel Training and Consulting. We are corporate and individual trainers in Excel, HR Analytics, and Project Management. You can follow Tom on LinkedIn, and I will also send his course at Excel Cave. So today's topic is we are going to do 3 in 1. I don't know how Tom is going to do it, but we are hoping we have enough time. So you have data validation, worksheet control, and condition formatting. So I'll stop sharing and welcome, Tom.
Hello, everybody. Crispo, thank you for the invite and the introduction there. Yeah, I'm Tom Hinkle, and I've been working with Excel for over 25 years, and it's it's one of the best tools out there because everybody knows it. That's my feelings. It's on so many systems, everybody knows it and is comfortable with it. So, yeah, what we're gonna go over today. I kind of wanted to focus on a couple of the basic. More of the basic features that get overlooked a little bit. We're going to start with data validation, and then we're going to go to conditional formatting, and then do some worksheet controls. And there's only a couple things I have for worksheet controls. But then, depending on the time we have left, we can open up to any questions you'd like to have. So if you can download, I think. Unfortunately, we just got the file available on the OneDrive. If you can download it and follow along, that's great. If not, I'm sure you can pick it up later and look through it and do some of the exercises. I also
Tom, your mic is off.
Has it been off the whole time?
Yeah. No. just went off.
Oh, that's weird. But no, so yeah, I'll send you. You have if you connect with me on LinkedIn, and you can have my email address too. I'll follow up on any questions you have on any of the techniques we use, or other things as well. Apologies if I'm looking in a different direction. I'm going to be looking at the screen I'm teaching from, but my camera is going to have me a little side angle there. So I'd really, like this to be a little fluid and dynamic. I've got the prepared materials, but if you have questions, jump in and just ask a question. And that's, what I've found is if you have a question, more than likely 2 or 3 other people have the same question, but a lot of times people don't want to jump in and ask anything. So feel free to do that for sure. So with that being said, does anybody have any initial questions before we get started? Or any thoughts? Something they wanted to get out today?
Hi, Tom, this is Shankar from India. How does it feel to be and hello everybody. How does it feel to be a MVP, first of all, in the first place?
I was just, Crispo and I were talking about that because I think Crispo's new too. It's really kind of an honor because you do have to get nominated for it. But one of the things about being an MVP that I really love is that we are now connected with Microsoft engineers in our field. And the MVP program is kind of specific to your discipline. There's a ton of Azure categories. And I think Crispo and I are in the Microsoft 365 realm. So we get, emails daily from Microsoft people and all the other MVPs talking about new features and, hey, what is working, what's not working? We found a bug here. And I've only been an MVP for a couple of months, and I want to utilize mine to have more reach with people and really train people. Does that kind of answer your question?
That really answers a lot. So what's the way ahead for people who are starting, people who are trying to start with Microsoft Excel certification or people who are trying to do PL300 as I am trying to do one. So how can we see the road ahead? Of course, even if it's going to take a dozen of years, but how is the road forward for us to reach a similar position if at all we are given a very good school to follow your
So the
footsteps?
MVP award is interesting. I feel like they do want a little technical competency, but what I feel, and Crispo, jump in and let me know if you have any thoughts. But I feel like the MVP is really more for those people who are building communities and trying to reach out and promote. And I used to think it was just Microsoft products. They do want you to promote Microsoft, but they're open to other things. They want to see people promoting a data community and helping people. And so, you know, I think, especially for Crispo, I think his starting this webinar series going all across Africa is something that really got noticed by people at Microsoft, that he's trying to really, you know, do something good for the communities of people. I was similarly really trying to engage in building like a Microsoft Excel conference, because I look at some of the other tools like Alteryx and Tableau and Snowflake. All these other companies have big conferences where they get people together and talk. And I looked at Microsoft and said, hey, Excel doesn't have a conference really. We have the Financial Modeling World Cup now, but I think that was my inroad. And then I've been really active on LinkedIn, posting tutorials, help, you know, coaching advice for people. So it's more, you know, the technical is going to help you, but I think it's really more community building. And that, you know, Crispo, if you want to add to that, that'd be great.
I think you have said it all. It's more about community and promoting Microsoft product and how Microsoft product can enhance your productivity. So, and then you get noticed, you get nominated, and then you have to go through a couple of questions and like of a mini interview with Excel, now Microsoft Teams. And then you just find yourself as an MVP. I was also equally surprised, Tom. So I think I would still be doing this because I was doing this before, a long time before I was an MVP. So it has to come from you, Shaklan, and how you are building your community. And then whether you get an MVP or not, if your passion is building a community and helping people to be more productive with Microsoft Excel and other products, you get it one day. Yeah, so I think that's it for me. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great to hear from both of you about those points. Thanks for answering very patiently for my question.
That's all.
Yeah, and that's a very good thing that Crispo said. Even if you don't get the MVP, just the act of starting to build a community, it's become very different than I thought it was in the beginning. I wanted to like teach people and maybe sell some classes, and I've made a ton of good friends through LinkedIn that I'll probably never meet in real life, but you know, we talk on the system, and we have side DM conversations and coffee chats with people. So yeah, it's fun. Okay, any other questions before we get started? No? Okay, well, I'm going to share my screen then, and let me know if you can't see it. There's a workbook we're working from, and we're going to kind of work left to right today on the tabs at the bottom. Okay, so some of these, we're gonna need a couple different data sources, but for the beginning, for the data validation, we're gonna use this sales table, and this is just a data set I pulled off of somewhere on the internet that has some sales data and some products and contact information and phone numbers and things like that. So one of the things I want to get to at the end of data validation is, I do really want to go over the basics, but this is kind of something you can do with data validation is, we all know about the drop down. So I'm coming in here and I've got my database, and I want to look at, company. I want to look at the order status for some companies. So I've got a drop down here, and I've got all the statuses of my orders: canceled, disputed, on hold, resolved, shipped. So maybe I want to look at all the on hold customers. So when I click that, data validation helps me do the drop down, helps me do this help right here. If you see this order status, select an order status to get a list of companies with that status. That's part of data validation. And then this is an advanced technique that we will get to. When I clicked on this status, that changed the drop down for this. So now on hold, I've got a list of all the companies that have an order on hold. And I click that, and it's going to bring up my contact name and the phone number so I can reach out to them and say, hey, what can we do to get your order moving again, or something like that. And like I said, this validation, if I go to a different status, disputed, then my next box will change to the companies that have disputed status there. So I don't think a ton of people use this capability very often. One other thing with the data validation I'll show you here, but we'll get into in the basics. It does provide a drop down, but even though there's a drop down, you can type something else there too. I think most people with data validation think of the drop down. That's what it's mostly used for. But if I type something, the data validation will come back and say you should select a valid status from the drop down list on the cell. You can give people feedback as to what to do if they've typed the wrong value there. So those are the things we're going to look at. Let's go ahead and start with the basics though. So here's a very basic spreadsheet. I'll make it a little bigger here. So to do a data validation, and I'll say this too, every cell in Excel runs data validation in the background, but until you customize it, it doesn't really do anything. So I'm going to go to my first name field here, and on the data tab, I'm going to go to data validation. And here's the box that comes up. And so you see what's happening here is here's your validation criteria. And right now it's allowing any value. And that's what I mean by say it's running on every cell, whether you do something or not. So this is the main screen that gives you the controls on the tool. So if I click down here, you'll see I can make this cell. I can have Excel go in here and validate if it's a whole number, if it's a decimal, if it's a list. That's how we do the drop downs. It'll validate dates, times, text length, and then some custom things. So let's just go ahead and do a couple of these. So with first name, I can just put a simple validation that I want the text length to be a certain length. So I go there, and now I want to say first name has to be at least 2 characters and no more than 15. That's all I'm doing here. And you can also have this ignore blank up here, which is important because sometimes you want to have a control on the value, but you don't want it to run when there's nothing there. So I usually leave this ignore blank there too. So I'll click OK. And now if I just type one letter, Excel comes back and gives me an error. Hey, it doesn't match the validation rules you put in there. This is kind of like a generic Excel error message, and I'll show you how to modify that too. So then we can do the same thing with last name. But instead of doing that, I want to show you something else kind of neat. If I want to have the same rule, because everybody knows what copy paste special values is, don't you? Give me a little click on the reactions if you know copy paste special values. There's a react. So one of the things you could do with data validation is once you have a rule, I can copy that. And then if I go to paste special, there's a validation criteria. That will copy your data validation rule that you wrote on one cell to any other cell you want to move it to. So you don't have to go and rebuild it all over the place. And so now my last name, that also doesn't match the rule, okay? So before we get to some of the others, let's look at this error message. It says this value doesn't match the data validation restrictions defined in the cell. That's not a super helpful error message. And this is one of those things when people use this, they don't know about data validation. So I'll come up here and I've got my rule defined, but these other two tabs are important too. I'm going to go over to the error alert first. And right now it's generic. I haven't put anything in there. So what I want to do if somebody doesn't meet that rule is put a good message back to them to tell them what to do. So I'm going to say last name. That'll be the title of the window. Okay, in the error message, I'm just going to tell them what my rule was. I should have this, your last name should be between 2 and 15 characters. So now when I type something that doesn't meet the rule, I've customized my error message and it gives the user a little bit more feedback on what they need to do to match that validation rule. So you should have between 2 and 15, and then you can retry or cancel. One other thing I'll show you about that particular feature, when we're on the error alert, by default, you have a style that says stop. And that means anytime that a rule doesn't pass what you put in, it's going to stop them and not let them put that in. But maybe we just want the rule to be a suggestion. Hey, you should have at least 2 characters and no more than 15, but we still want to let them put it in if they really want to. So in that case, we're going to change this style from stop to warning. And I'll show you what happens here. A really long value there, hit enter. Now I get a different error message. It's a warning. You should have a last name between 2 and 15 characters. Do you want to continue? But it's going to let me input that value anyway. I'm just giving the user a warning. Hey, this might be a little abnormal from what we've defined as a rule. And it let me keep that there. And the third one on that error tab is just informational. And really the difference here is informational is going to allow it to come through no matter what and give you a different icon, just saying, hey, it's informational here. And it just tells you, you should keep between 2 and 15, but it doesn't even give you the choice to back it out or not. It's going to accept that as informational. All that being said, 90% of the time, you're going to have it be on the stop style. So that's going to keep people from putting in a value that they shouldn't. All right. So age, that's another one that we would put in. And on that rule, we would want that to be a whole number. And it can also be between 2 numbers. So a minimum is 1, obviously. And I'm hopeful that it's going to be longer. So I'm going to put 120 as a maximum age. I'm shooting to get really old here. So now if I put 130 in, it blocks me. I haven't set up my default error, so I just get the generic error message. Now here's what we're going to build our first drop-down list. I've got a list of classes over here, freshman, sophomore, junior, and senior, and I want this to be a drop-down. So I'm going to go to my data validation, and I'm going to do a list, and in my source, I'm going to have it be just my list here, and click OK. And now I get a drop-down, freshman, sophomore, junior, senior. Typically, when you do these drop-down lists, I would take and put this if I can, I'm going to put it on the same worksheet, but maybe move it over to a column way out of the way so nobody sees it. Another technique people use is to take the list and maybe put it on its own worksheet and have it be a named range. If I give this a named range here, I already did. I did student class. I named it last night when I was preparing this. So for the list, you can put in a cell address or you can put in the name of the range, student class, and it'll pick that up. Questions on that? on making the lists. One trick I will show you when you have a list like this that's just out there. If I add another class, it won't necessarily pick that up because it didn't get, put in that named range. But the trick I've used over the years is if you go to the last cell or somewhere in there and do an insert and move it down, then it will pick that up, because when you did that insert, it expanded the cell range, whether you use the named range or cell references. That's just a quick way to keep your list modified. GPA, we would want to be able to do that here. We're going to have that be a decimal, and we're going to have another between characteristics between. Hopefully it's never 0, but you never know. And then I think in the United States, we can go up to 5 points for a GPA. Again, pretty simple. If I put in something greater, doesn't let me do it. Dates are good. So here I've got a start date and I've got an end date. And sometimes people will use an if statement to make sure that my end date, I don't want an end date that's before my start date. So here's where you can do a data validation rule there too with dates. So I'm going to go here. I'm going to go to a date rule. And I want to say, I can have just a generic range. I need it between, 2 dates, or I can say it has to be not between, equal to, not equal to, greater than. I'm going to say it has to be greater than this one right here, my start date. So I can click another cell to be a component of that data validation. And now let me go. It doesn't let me because I put in a date that was before the start date. So now if I do 9/24, and then I can do 9/23, and you still have to remember, when I set up that rule, I set it up as greater than start date. I didn't do greater than or equal to. And that would have let me put the 9/23 in there. Making sense so far? Anybody have any thoughts on what they could use this for, other than my little examples here?
Yes, it does. I think the question that I wanted to ask you is, for the drop-down list, instead of adding, can you find a way to use a table where it is?
Yes.
Yeah.
And
If
this
you can
actually,
show that as a trick instead of showing how it can dynamically expand.
yeah, if you have a table set up, you can have it picked there, and we'll get into this in just a minute, but
Okay.
that's where on this one here, it is referencing tables and dynamic arrays. My lists over here are all built on tables and dynamic arrays, and we may not understand all of these right here, but this is, to answer your question, Crispo, this is where I went into my table and I got my column of sales and customer name and status. And then, I went into my table, I chose my columns of customer name and status. And then I also got unique values and sorted them. And then I used that as the feeder for my drop-down list. That make sense?
Yes, it does. It does to me. Maybe you can show it step by step for the other users.
Yeah, let's do that. So I'm going to try to rebuild this a little bit. So I hope some of you are familiar with tables, but basically this sales database is an Excel table, and I've called it table sales. And so unfortunately, I'm not going to dive into all the table functionality, but if you want to follow up later with Crispo or I, you can. So with tables, you can reference things more dynamically and with names, and it will pull things open. So what I did here is my first order status, the data validation for that. I'm doing a list, and actually this is hitting a dynamic array too, but let me, I used the table to build that dynamic array. So when I come over here, what I've done is I'm using tables to build my list here, and I always start basic equals table sales. If I start by just saying table sales and then the column heading, I'll get that whole column heading. So again, to show people, table sales is the name of my table, and then status is a column heading. And I'll bounce over here and show you. I'm in table sales, and then status is a column heading. So I can refer to any column in the table with that notation. If I wanted quarter ID, I could go here, say equals table status, and then quarter ID, and that would list all the values from that table. But I have to do a few things more, because what I want here when I'm building my status list, I don't want every value. I want just the unique values for my list. So I always, this is truly how I work. I start with something simple that I can figure out easily, because I'm not always that smart. And then I start wrapping it in other things. So I've got table status. The next thing I want to do is make sure that it's unique. So I can use the unique function. And wrap that up. And now I have unique values in that list. And if I want to get really cute, like I did over here, I can do one more thing, and I can just say sort. And then it'll sort that column alphabetically in addition to pulling that back. So let me pause real quick. Does anybody have a question on that and how I use the table? And again, if you have a question, I promise you 3 other people have the same question.
You can unmute yourself and ask a question or like.
Hello. Yes.
Yes.
Mine is not a question. Actually, it is something I discovered, I think, about a month ago.
Okay.
What is coming out now, I think the validation list is now actually automatically filtered for you. So even when you just pick the reference, it will filter directly. Maybe
like you don't have to use the unique button or.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
That would be something, and that's a great thing about teaching. You learn things too. So
I know. I've also not. I don't know that. Thank you, David, for sharing.
You're welcome.
So let me see. I'll do a quick test on that. I totally believe you, because I've found some things too. So if I do a data validation here, you're saying, is this the right way to do it? David, just have my list unfiltered.
Yes, it is the right way. So if you just do a validation based on J.
Like that?
Yes.
Oh, it just did the first one.
You have to add a hash for it to come.
Oh, okay.
To make it an array.
Well, there you go. I just learned something too. I could have gotten this exercise done a lot faster last night. And for those of you who don't know, the dynamic arrays is kind of a new way Excel does things. And there's a lot of features like the one David just showed us that are really useful with it. So that will be on a post in LinkedIn very soon too. I'm gonna have to raise Crispo to put that out there. Okay. So the next thing I'll show you, and I'll just go over this briefly because I'm starting to lose track of time here. I won't go in too in depth. You guys will have the workbook. So what I did there for the second dynamic array that does the company, I pulled back a list of customer names and statuses, and then in my dynamic array there, I'm actually going to have it. This is my list of companies and statuses, but then I have one over here where I actually filter it by. Part of that filter is what people chose in the first drop down. So I'm just using the first one. I'm using the first value here as part of the filter in my array over here. Filtering the value on 01 is equal to B5, which is my value from the first one. And that's how I'm able to change the company dynamically once I pick the status. So I do want to move ahead. We just have about 20 more minutes, right, Crispo?
We can add if you don't mind.
Okay, I can go longer for sure.
Okay.
So we'll come back to this if we do have time. But let me go over here to inventory validation. And here's some other rules I wanted to talk about. This is for the custom one. We did example these on the basics. So I looked at this inventory list that I downloaded off of Excel, and here's kind of the validations I might put on values in a table. For name and description, I might have a length validation. Unit price, I'd put a decimal one. Quantity in stock, I put a whole number. There's one we haven't done yet that I really don't use often, but it's a custom. And if you see this inventory ID, they all start with IN. So you could put a data validation there that is actually a formula. So this formula is gonna kick off. So I want to make sure here that the first two characters of this inventory ID are letters, and it's IN. So I'm gonna say equals left. Click the cell I'm in. Put that there. Now I'm going to validate that somebody's typing an IN with the inventory ID. So instead of just typing the number, it doesn't match the criteria I put in. So I might want to modify my rule there too and just say now I get a good error message too that tells people what to put in there. One last thing for data validation, and then we'll move on. You get that error if you type that in, but the other thing you can do on the input message is put a little helper for the cell. So I can say, so before I give some people the opportunity to break the rule and come back, I'm giving them the hint, you've got to start with IN. And this data validation, it's similar to a note, but whenever you come on a field, that's the little help you get. Inventory ID must start with an IN. Okay. And then lastly, here's that feature where I can copy that and I can do a paste special validation. And now all those cells have that same validation rule on them. Okay. Now the very last thing before I go for questions on that, and then we move on. If you do put validation rules on a table, then when you're going to new rows of that table, the validation rules do carry over just like a formula. So it will continue to go down if you have validation rules in a table. Okay. Questions, thoughts? What was the coolest thing you just learned in the last 15 minutes? Was there something interesting that you liked? Anyone?
I think I've learned that I don't have to use unique. That's new.
Yes. I bet you there's a lot of MVPs that don't know that either, Crispo.
Yeah. Maybe it was sneaked in, and you know those features that got sneaked in, and you have no idea whether they are there or not until somebody tests and tells you. You never know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Okay. So now I want to move on to conditional formatting. I'm going to show you another trick here, just so I can throw these in. The Windows control section was kind of some things I want to show people about working with the Excel interface, or some shortcuts. So one right here I want to show you, if you don't know. I've got a lot of sheet tabs now. I want to be on conditional formatting normal. And a lot of times we're used to just going back and forth with these tabs over here to move sheet tabs. If you right click on these sheet selectors, you get a list of all the worksheets in this workbook, and you can just go right to one and just click on it. And that works really well. Like sometimes people have these workbooks where they have every month of every year. You know, you might have January 2001 through December 2001, and then the next year and next year, so you can get 50 sheets in there. This is a helpful way to just get to your sheet quickly that way. So what we're going to do here is work with conditional formatting. And we'll, again, start with the basics and hope to get to some more intricate things. Actually, let me see if I've got this available to show you real quick. Yeah, I am going to show you something I want to get to after we go over the basics real quick. The best thing for me for conditional formatting is that you can apply it to pivot tables. So I've got a pivot table here that has conditional formatting of data bars here, and we're going to build this in a few minutes. That if I change this pivot table at all, the data bars will stay with you whatever you do. So if I move location over here on top of item, the conditional formatting data bars keep staying with those values that we put them on. Well, let me show you one other. Then here is an indicator list in a pivot table that's tied to being able to set the thresholds outside of the pivot table. So right now, everything that has sales under 200 is red. But I can make that a different number. I can make that 100. And then it dynamically changes the conditional formatting right there on my pivot table. If I want the yellows to be 200, and then the greens are just whatever's left over. And we'll see how to do that in just a minute, but I want to start with the basics of how you do conditional formatting, for those that may or may not know. So here we have an example of what I want to build below with you guys. A small little like client bill rate table. Here's a bill rate per hour, and then here's new bill rates. And then we're showing those by data bars and by icon sets as well, and how they can all be, you know, it's just another visual way to show people what's going on, and you can see quicker that way. I mean, if I just look at the numbers, I can't tell you quickly that TND is the highest bill rate, but if I look at my data bars, it's right there. It's the best one. So we're going to start off and build the same thing, and we're going to start just with client bill rate right here. And I want the rule to be where the rate is greater than 100, it's going to be green, and less than 100, it's going to be red. So I'm going to go to my home menu, I'll start off by highlighting what I want to format conditionally. And then I just want to start up here. There's a lot of predefined rules. It'll kind of get the context set up for you. So I want to have a rule where everything that's greater than 100 is green. So I'll go to my greater than rule. And it sets me up this quick little format cells that are greater than. Now Excel took a guess at an average of that range of data, but we want it to be 100. So I'm going to type in 100. And it's given me some basic formats. We'll see how to change all that. Light red fill with a dark red text. No, but the greater than 100, I want to be green. So I'm just going to pick that and click OK. And then I want to apply another rule on top of that. So I'll go to conditional formatting again. And this time I'm going to be less than. This is going to be less than 100. Be a light red fill with a dark red font. And click OK. And just like I did with the data validation, by doing greater than and less than, I left off the 100. So I can modify that. But instead of deleting the rules, I'm going to just go modify them. And that's how I work with conditional formatting too. I'm always going to start with one of the rules off the ribbon and then go in and modify it. So I'm going to go into manage rules. And this will show you the rules that are active for that cell. And so we're going to go in and we're going to say that 100 is actually a good thing. So I'm going to say, I'm going to click on this rule here where my cell is greater than 100, and I'm going to edit rule. Now you can start just making a rule this way, but you see it's a lot more detailed. This dialog box is a little trickier, and it's nice to just have it filled in. So now I can just go modify and say, format cells where the cell value is greater than 100. I want it to be greater than or equal to. So I can just put that there. The other thing I can change here is you see I got the colors. The defaults it gave me are okay, but I want it to be more distinctive. So I can go down here and change the format. So even though conditional formatting, the button gives us some choices, this format brings up every formatting option you have in Excel, so you can modify it that way. So I'm going to have the fill color, instead of being a light green, I'm going to have it be a really dark green. And then the font color, instead of being green, I'm going to have that be white. And I'm going to make it bold too. And click OK. So now my format is going to look like that. Go back out here. And the last thing I'm going to do, I don't have values for Acme widgets or OK Gardens, but I may. So here's where Excel tells you what this rule is going to apply to. C40 and C45, because we clicked that first. But if I click in there, now I can just drag that down. Oops, maybe I can't drag that. But I can modify that to be my whole range. And then I'll click apply. And you see how it changed that rule there. So I get into this manage rules a lot to really customize them how I like. And I'm actually going to have that go to new bill rates too. So I can say, instead of going to C40 to C48, I'll let it go to D. And then I'll click apply. I can click apply before I get out of this to see what happens. And then just for practice, let's do the same thing for red, because we want the red to be a little bit more dynamic and look like the green. So here, I'm just going to copy this applies to, put it on the red line. I want it to be the same thing there. And then I'm going to change my format. I'll go to edit rule and change my formatting. Go to fill, do that, and then font. I'm going to have be white and bold. And I can click apply, see what it looks like, and it expands it out the whole way. Okay. So let's try to get something more than just colors there. Let's go to what's called a data bar. So I'm going to highlight this here. This is basically just a copy of my new bill rates items. And I'm going to go to data bars. And here, just again, gives you some presets. I'll pick the blue preset solid fill and I'll click in there. And now I've got a bar that goes along and shows you how far the numbers are. Well, there's a couple of really ugly things about this. First is by having a number in there too, it's overlapping and it doesn't look great. So we've got to go fix that. I'll go to conditional formatting, manage rules, and I've got the data bar. And I don't know if you guys noticed this, but right now I don't see the other rules that I set up for the red and the green. So this is something really important to look at. When you come into the manage rules, it's saying show formatting rules for the current selection where you are. Those other rules are still on the workbook, but to see them from where we are, I'd have to go here and look at the formatting rules for the entire worksheet. Then it shows all the rules, even the ones I have for this table up here, and you have to know which one you're looking at to modify. But I just want to look at rules that are applying to the current selection right now. So I'm going to go into this data bar rule and click edit rule. And then there's a couple things we're going to do here. The first thing we're going to do is you see how the data bar overruns the text. Right now with minimum and maximum, that's for the data bar. It's saying basically put an axis on based on the values in that cell. So my minimum is going to be automatic. That's going to be 0. The maximum is going to pick the biggest value, which is 180 right there. But what if I wanted to make some room to have that 180 show? I could have my maximum be something that I put in. It can be any number I put in, and I'm going to have that be 300 and click OK. Then I'll apply it. And now you see what it did? It gave the data bar a different scale so that I can see the data bar and the number together, and it's not overlapping. Makes it look a little better. So there's a lot of those features in here you can play with. And I went in here and I changed the maximum from automatic or highest value to being what number I wanted to type in, 300. Now that looks good, but personally, I like a different effect with that data bar. I like having one column with the numbers there, and I'll insert another column. We have this go back to automatic or the highest value. And there's this button here that says show bar only. So that's, to me, an even better way. I'm going to click that and click OK and apply it. And so that takes away the number from that cell, but it's still in the cell. If you look at the formula bar, it still has the value of that cell in there. This is just referring back to the new bill rate. So it's still there, but that option in conditional formatting is just telling me I only want to show the bar. I don't want to show the number at all. And here's where you can change a couple other things, you know, some of the different appearances of the bar. You can just change the colors here, give it a different border. Bar direction is context. So if you don't want the bar going from left to right, you can switch it to go right to left there as well. But the way I've set this up is this is just totally a personal style of mine. I like having the number in one column and then the data bar extending out from the number in the other direction. Okay. Questions on these, or any thoughts or things you want me to try out?
I think for me, it's just a caution that too much conditional formatting can make your workbook to be very, very slow. I've seen that some people with like 1,001 duplicated conditional formats, and then they wonder why their workbook is very slow. So as you put your conditional formatting, I think people should know that it can make, when it is too much and too duplicated, it can make your workbook to be slow.
Well, and that's a good point, Chris. But the other thing I'll say on that too is not only does it make it slow, but it really takes away from what you're trying to do. I mean, this is a little grid that has a lot of stuff going on. It's got the colors here and the data bars and the icons. It's too much. Now it's here just for learning purposes, but you'd really only want like one thing in a table. So, if I was really putting this out, I would probably go here, clear these rules from the selected cells. And now this is, I think, a reasonable amount of conditional formatting on this table. I've got some values, and I've got one data bar applied to these values. So, yeah, thank you for adding that. So the last thing I'll do for this example is do the icon sets, and then we'll do the pivot table ones. So I'll go back and start here again, and instead of data bars, we'll go to icon sets, and I'll give some numbers here, or not some numbers, some circles here. So this really, the icon sets are really great, but you almost always have to modify these. This defaults to go into a percentage. So the top third are going to be green, the middle third of values are going to be yellow, and the bottom third are going to be red. So you'll go in here, do your manage rules. And then down here is, again, where the really detailed rules of these icon sets are. And you see it saying when the value is greater than or equal 67%, and that's of the values in the range we selected, we're going to make it green. When it's less than 67%, we're going to make it, and greater than 33, we're going to make it yellow, and otherwise we're going to make it red. Now, the first thing I would do here to modify this is not percentage, I'm going to put values in. So instead of being a percent, I'm going to say everything where the number is greater than 120, that's going to be green. Okay. And then I have to put this yellow value in here, but I really want everything that's less than 50. Actually, I'm going to have to be higher with the values. Everything that's less than 100, I'm going to have that be red. So I have to put that in here because that'll put the boundaries on the yellow. So now the yellow is going to be when it's less than 120, but greater than 100, it'll be yellow, and otherwise it'll be red. Click apply and OK. And actually, let me make the green a little higher because I need to illustrate this effect. And I'll make the red be 80. So now this is a little better. I've got green, red, and yellow. But to the point of being kind of minimalist, I don't need the yellow. When I'm designing this table, I don't care about yellow. So it's within tolerance. Why do I need an icon there? I just need to know the things that are performing really well or the things that are performing horribly. So let me go back in here and manage rules and edit that rule. And so what I'm going to do here, first thing I'm going to do is just show icon only again. But then this thing, the conditional formatting, gives me 3 icons that I have to use. It's really annoying, but here's the trick. Once you set up the rule, you can go in here and click any other icon that's available. I could choose a different one, or I can just say no cell icon. So now I'm only going to show the green and the red. Click apply and OK, and boom. Now I've got these buttons that show me exactly what I need to look at. The stuff that's really performing well and the stuff that's not selling well. And then I can just go ahead and center that too, so it looks a little nicer. Thoughts on that? Anyone? Questions? Okay, everybody ready to see the pivot table version of this?
Yeah.
Okay, I have to move over a couple slides. So for this pivot table, we're going to use a little data set. It's called a bakery shop, and it just has locations, items, cost of items, items sold, revenue, and days. So I'm going to make a couple simple pivots with this. The first one's going to be the data bars, and then we'll do the icon sets. So I'm going to start as my table name here. Table bakery shop. So I'm going to make a pivot table out of this. Insert pivot table. And I'm going to put it over here, right underneath here. Oops. Sorry, I messed that up. Insert my pivot table. Put it underneath the example. Click OK. So what I want here is cookies. And then I want the location. And then I want the sales. Or the revenue. Sum of revenue. And just because I have to do this, because it's the way I work, I have to take my grand totals off for rows and columns before I go any further. So now I want to put those data bars on there that show that. So this is another trick that I do. I've got the sum of revenue here. What we need to do to be able to put the data bars and show the values by themselves, and you don't have to do it this way, but I'm going to add sum of revenue again, and I'm going to modify that. I'm going to make that name of the second one. I'm just going to give it a dot, 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 because that'll show up on the pivot table, but it won't. See how it doesn't really take away from the fact that this is revenue. And I should just change that name. So now I'm going to do conditional formatting on this second column that has the total sales there. And to set it up, the good news is the setup's the same as it is on a regular table. So, but I'm just going to click one cell this time. I'm going to go to conditional formatting, put my data bars on, go there, and then I'm going to modify that, edit that rule, and make it so it's data bars only, and then click OK. Oh, and I want to give it a higher scale here. I'm going to say its highest value is going to be 1,000. And click OK and apply. That might have been too much. Anyway, you'll get the point. So now I've got a data bar set up without the values here. But I want to apply it to that whole pivot table. So I'm going to come up here to conditional formatting and manage rules, and I'm going to go to edit rule. I'm going to click on that rule, edit the rule. And now here's something we haven't really looked at before. Look at this top box. It says apply rule to N23. That's just the cell I'm on. But look at these other ones. All cells showing a value, or all cells showing values for item and location. Those two options are tied to the pivot table. I haven't quite figured out the complete difference between these two. I always go to the bottom one and then click OK and then apply. And now that data bar applies to the entire pivot table. No matter how you modify this, the data bar is going to stick with the pivot table, if you will. So I can go here, I can filter out a column. Maybe I just want to see Manhattan, shrinks up the data bars. Anything you do, if you put another qualifier on there, if I went to days and got rid of location, oh no, it was tied to location, so that's why it didn't work, because it was tied to location there. I think I might have just figured out the difference. All cells showing values. Okay. So questions?
Can we set up from a scale of one color of blue? The
Oh,
bars?
set up a scale of blue?
Yes.
I don't know. I've never done that on the data bars. But I do, there is a way to do that, but I'm not sure off the top of my head how to put that in there. Oh, no, I'm sorry. I totally just forgot about that. There's absolutely a way to do that. So let me wipe out the rules. Just forgot for a second. Manage rules. Let me get rid of the rule. Delete that rule totally. And actually, I'm going to get rid of that second one for the color scales. So if you want to do color scales, that's the conditional formatting for color scales. That's what you were talking about, the different shades of blue based on what it is. So I'll start with the green one, and then I will apply that to the entire pivot table. And that sets up my color scale, but then I can go in here and modify the scale too if I want a little bit. So total values. Let me change this back to get rid of the day here. I think there's too many things going on. Oh, I have this value that's way too high here. Okay, so now I've got some values in there that are different. I think that the scale isn't showing that great because the values are not letting it represent it that good. But yeah, that's the other option for color scales. Is just go to color scales and use that as the rule, and then we can modify that color scales rule as well. And if I wanted it to be blue, I could come in here and modify it, and then that would be blue. To modify that rule there. And then you can mess with the numbers to make the scale different. So maybe because they go so high, different. Does that answer your question?
I mean in data bars, but it's fine. Okay.
I haven't done that. I absolutely don't know if you can do that scale on data bars. You can have it be a gradient. You can definitely have it be a gradient value. Clear the rules from this pivot table. But I don't know if you can have that gradient mean something.
Data bars.
Do what?
We will search if we can later. I told you if I find a way.
That would be great. Yeah, email me if you get away. So, but everything is there. The whole key to this is once you set up a little rule with the basics, go into manage rules, and there's many options for all the different things you want to do here. So, gradient fill, color. So yeah, go in and play with some of these things under the manage rules. If you find a way, email it back to the group. All right.
Okay.
Let me do the last one where I'm tying this pivot table rule to values out in the cell, and then kind of hold for questions and maybe wrap up. And I apologize that I have gone a little longer. I haven't done this combination of classes before, so Let me just copy this pivot table. Actually, that'll be quicker. Put the location back on. Okay, so now we want to put the icon sets on. Conditional formatting, icon sets. Put it there. And I can also, when you put one value in a pivot table, you can go to conditional formatting, manage rules, but you can also go right here to formatting options that will let you put it right in the whole pivot table too. It's a little quicker way to do it. But I always like to show things the main way through the manage rules here. So now I want red to be anything under 200 and yellow to be 400, 200, and green, everything above that. So I'll go into my manage rules. And edit the rule. And the first thing I need to do is change the type from percent to number for both of these. And it's going to say when the value is greater than or equal to 400, I want it to be green. When it's greater than 400, when it's less than 400, but greater than 200, I want it to be yellow. And then when it's less than 200, it'll be red. So I'll click OK there. Apply, and that works. Now I need my value to be higher for red. So right now, for my value to be higher for red, I have to go in here and change those values. I have to have this be like, I'm gonna make this be 1,000 and then the other be 2,000. So I'll have it be green when it's over 600. And then I'll have it be red when it's over 400. Now I've got some red values. But you see, this is kind of annoying to have to go in here every time and change these numbers. So when you've got these rules set up, instead of being 600, I can just say equals that. I can click the cell reference in there. And then for the other one, oops, I clicked the wrong one, I think. Oh, no, I did the right thing. And 400, and then this is going to be whatever that value is here. So in my formula, I'm putting in something in the worksheet, so I can just change the values on the fly and do some really experimental analysis. So what if I want it to be 1,000? Now the conditional formatting is changing based on what I'm typing in over here. And you could tie this to a data validation too. You can make that a drop-down list where you only have certain values and people can't just type in whatever they want, because sometimes that gets to be too much. And then the last thing I would say here is the same thing with the first rule we did, is that we might not even want to see the yellow. So I'll edit that rule and I'll just still have the rule fire, but I'm going to have no cell icon. So now it really just pops out the greens and the reds, what's good and what's bad. All right, well, I think I'll wrap up for questions here. We're not going to get to some of the worksheet controls I wanted to, unfortunately, but I see people are dropping off, so I want to be respectful of time here. What other questions or thoughts do you guys have at the end here as we kind of wrap up?
for me, I think your last trick with tying up the numbers to a cell outside the data, the condition formatting is very, very interesting. I think I had seen it once, long time ago. I had actually forgotten about it. I need to add it to my tricks on when I'm teaching pivot tables. And the other thing is, I've seen people try to apply condition formatting on pivot tables like they do on the other kind of lists, but it doesn't work. Especially, it's not dynamic, especially when they
Right.
change. Yes. So they should follow your steps. Apply on one cell, and then you go use those pivot table what the IDs that come in when you are doing condition formatting. So if you try to apply it normally, it is not dynamic.
Exactly.
And I think yeah. So is there anyone else with a question? Okay. If the,
To me,
yes.
the no fill option is kind of very interesting.
Oh yeah, true. Even that one also, that one is extremely new to me. Yeah, the no fill one, especially so that when you fill out the yellow, so that you can see only the good and the bad. You don't want to see the middle ones. Yeah.
Yeah, you really want when you have icons, you really want to pop out the best values, so you focus on those. This would be a good one in my opinion. This would be a good one because I see 4 green values and 3 reds. So what I would do with this data is I would talk to the store owner of Manhattan and say, hey, can you go work with the Brooklyn store owner and see if we can figure out how to get their sales for croissants and muffins up?
Yeah.
Utilize that. So, all right, everybody. Well, I've enjoyed it, and I actually learned something really, really cool about dynamic arrays today. So that's a big win.
Yeah, true. Maybe my last question to you, and I always ask all the presenters, is what advice would you give somebody who is starting?
Starting with Excel?
Beginner in Excel, yes.
There's a lot of really advanced things in Excel, and one of the biggest things is Power Query, but I would put Power Query on day 2. For me, the things you need to learn when you start with Excel, you have to really have a good understanding of formulas and functions and understand the absolute referencing and how Excel builds formulas. And then with the functions, you need to know the lookups, VLOOKUP, XLOOKUP, and then one of Crispo's favorites is the if statement. Learn the if statement, but learn how the functions work. Then pivot tables and charts. Those are the things I would start with: functions and formulas, pivot tables, and charts. Once you have a good command of those, go straight to Power Query. So
yeah, true. Maybe the last one is how did you become good in Excel? Are there like tips, tricks, ways that you use to get better? How do you do
I think
it?
this is like a lot of skills in life. It's the repetitions. I'm 54 years old, and I was a computer science guy in college, and so in 1994, I got my first exposure to Excel. I had to build some little models, not even using macros or complex formulas, but just setting up some basic tables to account for some lists. And so I've literally been working with this program for almost 30 years, and it just takes time. It honestly took me about 1.5 years to really understand pivot tables. And to me, that came down to somebody finally showed me an example that made sense to me. So that's a really key thing in learning. You have to have something relevant to what your area of expertise is for it to make sense. At least for me, I do. So just got to get in there and do and try to figure things out. But
that's a very good, sorry, advice. you start with something that is of value to you, something that you are going to use it, so that it's not just theoretical, like reading about engineering models and you are an accountant. So you start with some accounting models, something that you're going to use or on a day-to-day to improve your productivity.
Yeah. And that's actually one of the really tough challenges of being a teacher, is how do you get this data and information that people from across the spectrum can understand? And I think that's why a lot of training goes to a basic sales type of model, because, you know, most of us can understand sales to some degree. But good point, Crispo. Okay.
Yeah. Thank you, Tom. Thank you for presenting today. You can follow Tom. You can check out his tutorials at Excel Cave. I've shared with at the chat. And see you soon, Tom. Thank you for presenting.
Thank you, guys. It's been great.
Okay, bye.
Thank you.